It began as a quiet morning at Bagshot Park, but within hours, the palace walls were trembling. Duchess Sophie, known for her grace and discretion, stumbled upon a document buried beneath layers of sealed correspondence, a clause that would rewrite royal jewelry inheritance forever. The Queen Mother's tiaras, long assumed to be Camilla's or even Anne's domain, were destined elsewhere, and no one was prepared for the name written in ink. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Sophie had not been searching for scandal. She had been doing what she had always done quietly, dutifully, without fanfare. The archiving project was meant to be routine, a careful review of correspondence tied to the Queen Mother's estate. Boxes sealed decades ago, letters catalogued but never scrutinized. It was the kind of task trusted only to someone the family believed would never exploit what she found. And that was precisely why fate chose her. The envelope felt ordinary at first, thick cream paper edged with age, but inside was something far from ordinary. A handwritten clause, signed in unmistakable ink, dated years before Elizabeth II's passing. The language was precise, deliberate, almost surgical in its clarity. The Queen Mother's private tiara collection. Every last piece was to be preserved and passed directly to Princess Charlotte upon her maturity. Not loaned, not divided, not reassigned. Passed in full. The name Charlotte was underlined once, firmly, intentionally. As if the Queen Mother had known this line would one day be questioned. For a moment, Sophie simply stared at it. Because this was not just jewelry. These were symbols of continuity, power, legitimacy, the Greville tiara, the diamond fringe, pieces worn at coronations and state banquets, pieces whispered about in corridors whenever succession politics grew tense. For years, it had been assumed that Camilla, as Queen Consort, would gradually absorb influence over the Queen Mother's legacy. Others believed Anne, as the steadfast daughter, might retain quiet authority over them. But Charlotte, a child not yet old enough to understand the weight of a crown? Sophie felt the tremor before the palace did. The clause had been executed long before the public turbulence of recent years. Before alliances shifted, before loyalties fractured. This was not reactionary, it was prophetic. And that realization made it dangerous. Her first instinct was silence, fold it back. Return it to the envelope. Pretend the discovery had never happened. Because revealing it would ignite something irreversible. It would wound egos, expose assumptions, perhaps even humiliate those who believed the jewels were already theirs in spirit if not on paper. Yet hiding it felt like betrayal not of a person, but of a promise written by a matriarch who had understood the monarchy better than most. The whispers began before Sophie spoke a word. An archivist noticed the file had been reopened. A private secretary logged the clause's reference number. Within hours, there were murmurs in Clarence's house. Questions in hushed tones. Why was Sophie reviewing that specific box? Who authorized it? And most importantly, what had she found? By evening, tension pulsed through private calls and closed-door consultations. Legal advisors were discreetly summoned. Old inheritance notes re-examined. The date on the clause became a source of quiet panic, because if it predated later adjustments, then it could not easily be dismissed. It had been intentional, it had been calculated, and at the center of it all stood Sophie, calm on the surface, storm beneath. She understood the fragility of what she held. Not diamonds, not pearls, but leverage. A shift in generational power. A message from the past aimed squarely at the future. The name underlined in ink was no accident. It was a signal, a choice, a declaration that the Queen Mother's legacy would skip conflict, skip compromise, and land in the hands of a young girl who represented renewal. That knowledge settled heavily on Sophie's conscience, because once revealed, it would redraw invisible lines within the family. And as the palace braced for impact, one truth became impossible to ignore. This revelation was not just about inheritance. It was about intention, about trust, about who the monarchy was quietly preparing to become. But this revelation wasn't just about jewels, it cracked open a decades-long deception that the monarchy fought desperately to keep hidden. Why would the Queen Mother bypass her own daughters and granddaughters? The answer lies buried in her wartime diaries, private letters, and a bond with a great-granddaughter she never met but somehow foresaw. What Sophie uncovered hinted at a royal strategy, quietly passed through matriarchal whispers and sealed in ink long ago. In the early chapters of her life, the Queen Mother was more than just a symbol of quiet strength, she was a strategist. Beneath her public smile lay a woman who understood the complexities of monarchy better than many men who sat on the throne. Her influence, especially over female lineage, was immense but understated. She believed that women were the silent architects of stability within the monarchy, keepers of tradition, protectors of legacy. Her role in shaping Queen Elizabeth II's outlook was not accidental, it was deliberate, cultivated through decades of grooming and private instruction. So when her private writings revealed a specific intent to bypass both her daughters and granddaughters in favor of a child unborn, at the time, it wasn't an act of sentimentality, it was strategy. The Queen Mother never openly challenged Camilla, but her silence said everything. Private notes, unearthed within the same archive Sophie stumbled upon, showed hints of deep unease, not just with Camilla's entry into the family, but with the values she believed Camilla represented. Words like unrooted, modern distractions and institutional dilution appeared in coded references. Her preference for bloodline loyalty and traditional upbringing was palpable. She feared that those who married in, especially those who stirred public controversy, could never truly protect the crown's deeper essence. And this fear, though unspoken, grew more intense as Charles's affections for Camilla deepened over time. But perhaps most intriguing were the Queen Mother's long conversations with Elizabeth. The second conversations, not logged officially, but hinted at through diary entries and passing letters. She reportedly urged her daughter to safeguard the future female heir, even if the world cannot yet see her. This wasn't about Charlotte personally, this was about legacy. A belief that a young girl, born in the right line, with the right spirit, would one day be the anchor the monarchy needed. She envisioned a time when the royal family would face public skepticism, shifting loyalties, and internal fracture. And in that chaos, a new queen in waiting, carefully shielded from palace games, would rise. Even more startling were records of royal tiara inventories that had quietly vanished from the archives. Multiple entries, Greville Emerald, Kokoshnik, Cartier Halo, were listed under mysterious codename redactions. Their trail stopped abruptly in the mid-2000s. No official record of reassignment, no transfer documents, just gaps. It now seems increasingly likely that the Queen Mother ordered their future destination coded, waiting for a specific moment or a specific child to claim them. And that child, by every whisper and every omen, was Charlotte. Was this foresight or fate? Did the Queen Mother truly predict the emergence of a girl like Charlotte, who would walk the tightrope of tradition and modernity with natural elegance? Or was it simply her final act of control, a last chess move from a matriarch who refused to let her bloodline dissolve into courtly politics? Either way, the implications of her decisions have rippled through the palace walls with quiet fury. But while the Queen Mother's intentions now shine through, others in the palace were desperate to keep them buried, and their panic was only beginning to show. When Camilla learned of the clause, her reaction was swift and scathing. Sources claim she stormed out of Clarence's house, demanding immediate legal reviews. To her, this wasn't just about diamonds and sapphires. It was a personal insult, a rejection of everything she'd clawed her way into. And it reignited a bitter, long-hidden war over royal jewels. For years, Camilla had moved through the palace with calculated grace, gradually laying quiet claim to the spaces, traditions and heirlooms once reserved for those born into royal blood. She had endured whispers, endured criticism, endured being compared to a woman no longer alive but forever present. And through it all, she believed she had earned her place not just beside the king, but within the crown itself. The Queen Mother's jewels, in her mind, were part of that silent coronation. She wore them occasionally, spoke of them fondly in public, referred to them as family heritage. So when news reached her that a sealed clause bypassed her entirely, that the most sacred pieces of that legacy were to be passed to a child one she had little connection to. Her fury was not just about loss, it was about erasure. The backlash was immediate. Legal counsel was summoned to re-examine archival terms, inheritance rights, and the legal standing of the clause itself. Was it a binding directive? Could it be overridden by a more recent agreement? Or had it somehow slipped through the cracks, protected by those who had long waited for the right moment to enforce it? Every document was suddenly scrutinized, every decision re-evaluated. Camilla's team believed the clause undermined her authority as queen consort. To them, it was an inheritance breach, a calculated power play, and they wanted it buried. Charles, caught in the eye of the storm, tried desperately to maintain equilibrium, but his attempts at neutrality only deepened the divide. Camilla accused him of weakness, of failing to defend her rightful place. She reportedly confronted him behind palace doors, demanding public support and legal confirmation of her entitlement. But Charles hesitated. His relationship with his grandchildren had grown warmer over time, especially with Charlotte, and the Queen Mother's clause, no matter how disruptive, had been authored by a woman whose words still echoed like law within royal memory. Sophie, now the unintentional epicenter of this upheaval, found herself receiving calls she never anticipated. Camilla, at first composed, quickly turned accusatory, demanding to know why Sophie hadn't come to her first, accusing her of disloyalty, suggesting she had been manipulated by Catherine. But Sophie, shaken yet unyielding, made it clear this wasn't a vendetta. It was a matter of truth, a matter of legacy. And no amount of intimidation would bury it again. And then came Anne. The Princess Royal, who had long kept her distance from such infighting, quietly entered the fray not to fuel it, but to protect its intended beneficiary. Her relationship with Charlotte was known to be close, and while Anne said little, her presence alone shifted the balance. She reportedly warned Charles in private, "If you ignore the clause, you ignore your mother." The implication was clear: this wasn't about jewels. It was about respect. It was about honoring what the Queen Mother had set in motion, even if it shattered today's fragile alliances. But while Camilla was busy waging a campaign, others within the firm were already aligning with the new royal future, and Princess Charlotte stood at the very heart of it. She's just a child. Yet in the eyes of many within the palace, Charlotte has already become the embodiment of a new monarchy, pure, untouched, regal by instinct. The clause wasn't merely a gift, it was a declaration. And it made her a target, a symbol, and a future queen in the making. Within months of the clause's quiet emergence, Charlotte's presence in royal engagements subtly began to shift. What once were brief, charming appearances were now replaced by carefully choreographed moments of poise, grace, and authority beyond her years. Behind the curtain, aides and senior royals took notice. She didn't just smile for cameras, she commanded attention. Her demeanor reflected more than education. It was legacy. The Queen Mother's foresight, etched into a forgotten clause, was beginning to play out like a prophecy fulfilled in real time. The symbolism of placing the Queen Mother's tiaras in Charlotte's future wasn't lost on anyone. It wasn't about fashion. It was about positioning, about reshaping the public eye to associate the monarchy's revered past with its carefully molded future. This was no ceremonial gesture, it was a cultural reset. By linking Charlotte to an era of discipline, war-tested grace, and national affection, the firm was planting seeds for a lineage untouchable by scandal. And William and Catherine, while measured in their response, made no attempt to hide their pride. Their daughter, still so young, was already being treated as a beacon of what the crown could be if nurtured wisely, and shielded fiercely. Behind palace walls, conversations turned increasingly focused on optics. Advisors began crafting long-term public narratives, subtly shifting attention away from traditional senior figures and placing it instead on the new generation. Charlotte began appearing in state portraits with more prominence. Her proximity to Sophie became more frequent, some say orchestrated, others say organic. But one thing was clear: Sophie had become a trusted guide, a quiet mentor, and perhaps the only royal elder who truly grasped the responsibility now silently resting on Charlotte's shoulders. And then there was the public, In an era fatigued by infighting, abdications, and reputational wounds, the people began to respond. Charlotte's image stirred something nostalgia for when the crown felt unshakable. Polls showed a dramatic rise in support for her future role. Social media, once divided over royal favor, united around a child untouched by past sins. She became a symbol of hope, not just for a family, but for an institution desperate to survive. Yet behind the inspiration was manipulation. No moment was accidental. Every photo, every wave, every pairing was part of a larger design. The clause had sparked more than inheritance, it had activated a machine, and that machine was moving with quiet precision. Those in favor of Charlotte's rise were not just aligning morally, they were aligning politically. A new order was being drafted, not with titles but with intention. Still, through the palace games and public affection, one thing remained deeply human: Sophie's bond with Charlotte. It deepened with each passing week. Not just as protector of a legacy, but as a woman who had seen too much truth buried and too many futures sabotaged. In Charlotte, she saw the rarest thing in royal history: potential untainted. But not everyone saw Charlotte's rise as destiny. Some viewed it as a threat to their survival in the royal structure, and the plotting began in the shadows. Whispers echoed through the palace halls. A cold war was forming between those loyal to the clause and those who would do anything to see it revoked. Names were taken, sides were chosen, and at the heart of it all stood Sophie, trying to navigate a monarchy on the brink of a silent collapse. Princess Anne was the first to send a signal, cryptic, veiled, but unmistakable. In a private corridor conversation with Sophie, she reportedly muttered, "The Queen Mother saw what we refused to." She said nothing more, but the meaning lingered. Anne, known for her blunt pragmatism, was not one to entertain sentiment. If she supported the clause, it wasn't out of emotion, it was out of respect for the monarchy's longer arc. She understood its brutal timeline, its need to prune for survival. That subtle nod from Anne carried more weight than any public endorsement. Yet not all were given clarity. Eugenie and Beatrice, despite their titles and proximity, were kept in the dark. Whispers suggest they were deliberately excluded from conversations that could jeopardize their alignment. Some in the firm viewed them as vulnerable to influence, too attached to familial comfort, too easily swayed by emotional appeal. To protect the strategy, information was rationed. This wasn't transparency, it was tactical ignorance. And the tension that brewed from that exclusion would soon ferment into quiet resentment. Charles, meanwhile, was a man tormented by duality. His loyalty to his mother's vision clashed violently with his obligation to keep the crown unified in the present. He could feel the claws slicing through the palace like a blade eatening to sever relationships he'd spent decades repairing. Some days he leaned toward tradition. Other days he pleaded for calm, for compromise. But the monarchy doesn't deal in half measures, and Charles knew that better than anyone. His indecision became a vacuum, and into that silence, others moved. Camilla's circle, already enraged by the clause, began to strike. Aides loyal to her allegedly seeded misinformation into the press stories about Charlotte's supposed immaturity, fabricated tensions between Catherine and Sophie, even claims that the clause itself had been tampered with. It was a desperate strategy, but one designed to cloud the truth. If the narrative couldn't be erased, perhaps it could be drowned in noise. But behind that chaos, a more subtle power was growing. Catherine remained publicly quiet, but every move she made behind palace walls was deliberate. She was consolidating influence, not through confrontation, but through consistency. Advisors began defaulting to her. Scheduling flowed through her channels. Even Charles began seeking her counsel more frequently. And while others bickered over the past, Catherine was laying the framework for the future with Charlotte at its center. Sophie, however, bore the heaviest burden. She had unearthed the clause, spoken the truth, and now watched the palace unravel under the weight of its implications. The pressure mounted by the hour. From Camilla's veiled warnings to the whispers from disillusioned aides, Sophie stood alone at the intersection of legacy and loyalty. Her heart wavered. She knew that another revelation could ignite a storm the family wouldn't recover from. But she also knew that silence, in this moment, might be the most dangerous betrayal of all. But just as Sophie contemplated staying silent to protect the fragile peace, one final document surfaced, one that would force her hand and shake the House of Windsor again. Sophie thought the clause was the climax until she found the tiara inventory file. Handwritten notes, missing entries, tiaras believed to be locked in the vault, mysteriously absent. Was someone already moving the jewels before the clause could be enforced? The file had been tucked away in a nondescript folder, stamped with a crest from the early 1980s. What began as a routine cross-reference quickly spiraled into a chilling realization. The Queen Mother's original tiara inventory listed 17 known pieces, each with detailed descriptions, provenance records, and storage designations. But when Sophie compared it to the most recent audit, one supposedly finalized after Elizabeth II's passing, only 11 tiaras remained accounted for. 6 had vanished. No formal transfer records, no security logs, nothing. What made it even more unsettling was that several of the missing items were among the Queen Mother's most iconic jewels she considered sacred, passed down through generations as symbols of sovereign femininity. The absence wasn't a clerical error. It was surgical, deliberate. And when Sophie dug deeper into internal correspondence, a name kept surfacing, an unnamed royal archivist who, according to whispers, had deep ties to Camilla's inner circle. The implications were staggering. Could someone within the palace have already acted against the clause before it surfaced? Was this sabotage premeditated? Then came the rumors, quiet at first, then growing. A high-value tiara resembling one from the Queen Mother's collection had reportedly appeared in a private showing overseas. No proof, no open sale, but enough buzz to alarm key figures. Sophie, already carrying the weight of the clause, now had a second crisis in her hands. It wasn't just about the will. It was about theft, deceit, cover-up. And if the tiaras were moved quietly, it meant someone believed they had the power to rewrite royal legacy before the public ever knew. In one redacted email, a phrase stood out: Project Diadem. No context, no details. Just a coded operation likely designed to avoid internal tracking. Sophie flagged it immediately and contacted William. This time she didn't wait. She reportedly handed him both files, the clause and the inventory, without preamble. His face, sources say, was unreadable, but his response wasn't. He left the meeting and made calls within the hour. Private security was instructed to re-audit the vault. Staff movement logs were pulled, and more critically, a discreet inquiry was launched into the royal household's archival system. What had begun as a hidden clause now evolved into a palace-wide investigation. If tiaras had already been moved or sold, it wouldn't just shake public trust. It would prove a coordinated effort to undermine the Queen Mother's final wishes. And at the heart of this quiet storm, Sophie stood alone again, the keeper of too many secrets, unraveling too many lies. But before William could act publicly, Charlotte herself unknowingly made a gesture that turned the tide in her favor, one captured in a single photo that went viral. Single portrait of Charlotte, wearing what many believe to be the Greville tiara, was released for her birthday. It wasn't just an image, it was a message. To the world, to Camilla, to the crown. And suddenly, the public's heart had chosen its queen. The photograph, delicate in composition but seismic in consequence, took less than 2 hours to go viral. Millions reposted it. Headlines flooded every corner of the internet, not just with admiration but with interpretation. To most, it was a birthday tribute. But to those who understood the codes of monarchy, it was a silent coronation. The tiara was unmistakable, believed lost, now draped on the head of the Queen Mother's great-granddaughter. It sent shockwaves through the palace, not for what it showed, but for what it confirmed. The jewels had not disappeared, they had simply been repositioned onto the future. Experts moved quickly to trace the tiara's history. From coronations to wartime banquets, the Greville tiara had symbolized resilience and royal authority. For it to reappear on Charlotte's head without explanation, without announcement, spoke volumes. It wasn't about styling, it was about inheritance. It wasn't a fashion choice. It was a declaration of identity, a claim laid in diamonds. Behind closed doors, Camilla was reportedly furious. To her, it was a public humiliation dressed as a celebration. She called it manipulative, calculated, and according to palace insiders, demanded to know who authorized the release. But she didn't need to ask. Everyone already knew. The fingerprints were Catherine's graceful yet unrelenting and Sophie's quiet yet fierce. Together they had not only unearthed the clause, they had brought it to life. In one frame they redefined the line of matriarchal power. Media analysts dissected every pixel. The timing, they argued, was deliberate. Released just days after rumors swirled about missing tiaras and internal investigations, the image offered no explanation, only confirmation. The jewels were not gone. They had been safeguarded, and now they had chosen their next bearer. The silence from Buckingham Palace only added fuel. There was no denial, no clarification. Only an echoing vacuum that allowed the public to draw its own conclusions, and they did, loudly. Public opinion shifted instantly. Where there had been debate, there was now unity. Charlotte wasn't just the beloved daughter of William and Catherine, she was a living emblem of the Queen Mother's legacy, a link between past and future. And for those watching from the outside, tired of scandals and shadows, it felt like hope. Inside the palace, the balance tilted. Advisors who had once whispered doubt now pledged quiet allegiance. Those who resisted the clause now faced an undeniable truth. The public had made their choice before the monarchy could make its own. And though no words had been spoken, a crown had been metaphorically passed not through speeches or ceremonies, but through a photo that history would never forget. But what no one expected was what came next: a royal summit, an emotional confrontation, and a final ruling that would silence the war for now. In a room filled with tension, King Charles made a decision that would echo through history. Surrounded by his closest family, he acknowledged the clause, upheld the Queen Mother's wishes, and accepted what the crown had always feared: Camilla would not reign over the Queen Mother's legacy. The summit was held in silence, far from public gaze, in the solemn halls of Sandringham. It wasn't a ceremonial meeting, it was a reckoning. For months, the tension had built like a storm behind castle walls. Now all those who mattered sat in one room, and for once, there were no distractions, no press, no protocol, just truth, raw, sharp, and unavoidable. The clause had proven itself unshakable. The tiaras, once thought lost, had reappeared. The photo had done what no advisor could: shift public sentiment in an irreversible direction. And Charlotte, unknowingly, had become the face of a royal resurgence the Queen Mother had envisioned long before. Charles's voice, though calm, carried the weight of generations.
"Let all speak for itself,"
he said, the words landing like a stone dropped in deep water. No debate followed. There was no need. The silence that met his declarations said everything. The clause was valid, the intent was clear, and the crown, at last, would honor the matriarch it once revered, even if it meant displacing one of its own. Camilla stood briefly, her expression unreadable. Those present say she said nothing, no protest, no plea, just a glance toward Charles, then a slow exit that left more questions than answers. She departed Sandringham early that evening, her motorcade cutting through the estate's fog like a line drawn through a chapter's end. For her, it was a symbolic severing. The jewels she once assumed were hers to wear had now been placed beyond her reach, not by spite, but by ancestral decree. In the hours that followed, quiet acknowledgements passed like coded currency. William and Catherine, poised and composed, offered Sophie a subtle nod that needed no words. It was gratitude, respect, and recognition of the storm she had chosen to walk into. The woman who had once been underestimated had, without design, protected the crown's most sacred line. By morning, the Queen Mother's tiaras had been returned to Windsor under royal seal, guarded not just by locks and glass, but by intention. A new title was quietly bestowed upon Charlotte in the family's internal ledger: Guardian of the Matriarchal Collection. A role with no historical precedent. A gesture that meant more than any throne room proclamation. It said to those within the House of Windsor, and to those watching beyond its gates, that she had not just inherited jewels, she had inherited a responsibility older than the crown. Its Alpa. The palace did not issue a statement. There was no announcement, but the silence was deafening, and it spoke more loudly than any royal decree ever could. The clause had been honoured, the tiaras restored, the future quietly rewritten. Yet even as peace returns, murmurs remain because in the world of crowns, jewels and bloodlines, nothing stays buried forever. Behind every royal truth is a shadow of silence, and Sophie, keeper of this explosive secret, still holds one final letter in her possession, one she never shared, not even with Catherine. A letter from the Queen Mother, addressed to Charlotte herself. What's inside, she hasn't said. Yet, the letter was found the same day as the clause. It had been sealed in the same envelope, hidden beneath old velvet-bound records and locked away in an unlabeled compartment, as if it had been meant for discovery only when the right eyes finally dared to look. Sophie, upon finding it, didn't react publicly. She tucked it away, reading the name handwritten across the front to Charlotte, "When the time is right." That single line was enough to shake her to her core. Not a legal document, not a formal royal directive, but something far more intimate. A message not to a monarch, but to a little girl who had unknowingly inherited more than jewels. Sophie made the immediate decision not to share the letter, not with the king, not with William, not even with Catherine, because the contents, whatever they were, could tilt the balance again. And after what had just occurred at Sandringham, the last thing the monarchy needed was another seismic shift. She hid the letter in a private safe. She told no one. But her demeanour changed, subtly. Those who knew her said she became more protective of Charlotte, more involved, more present. The bond between them deepened into something sacred beyond duty, beyond bloodline. The question of what the letter might contain has consumed palace watchers and insiders alike. Could it hold personal instructions from the Queen Mother, a prophecy, a warning, or perhaps a final truth that would alter how Charlotte's legacy is understood by future generations? Only Sophie knows, and she has chosen, for now, to remain silent. Her silence has earned her not suspicion but reverence. Even William, once cautious around her, now speaks of her with deep respect. He knows she could have made herself the centre of attention. She didn't. She chose the crown over chaos. Public fascination, however, continues to grow. Speculation has given rise to new rumours, one in particular that has spread like wildfire, that a second clause exists, that the letter may contain a hidden instruction tied to a deeper trust, one that bypasses even Charles and William, a plan long buried to protect the monarchy from itself, entrusted only to the one woman the Queen Mother believed would understand what must be done. And still, Sophie says nothing. She walks with Charlotte during family outings, she smiles in photographs, but her eyes hold a weight that can't be unseen. She is no longer just a duchess. She is the silent archivist of royal destiny, and with one unopened envelope she holds a secret that could define or destroy everything. The monarchy has survived scandals, wars and betrayals, but as the crown slowly shifts to a new generation, one truth becomes clear: Charlotte's reign has already begun, and Sophie holds the key to what comes next. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.